Hey guys, it's Brooklyn Lou the Skeptic, former evangelical, now turned atheist. And today I'm very excited. I have a special guest, and it's someone I've been following on YouTube. And I get a lot of inspiration because the man has a lot of knowledge. And it amazes me. It even includes all types of different subjects. Part of it that I'm impressed with is he has an incredible grasp of ancient cultures and civilizations. And of course, his channel is called Deconstructing Christianity. And you know that's right in my wheelhouse. So let's get to know him, and excited to have him on board. Come on in, Coach Renz.
How you doing, Brooklyn Lou?
All right. Coach Renz, I've been following you for a while.
Appreciate that.
And you have quite a following yourself. I'm amazed. Wanted to ask you how long you've been doing the YouTube.
Technically, I've been doing it for about 12, 15 years now. But when I first started doing YouTube, I wasn't doing it for the general audience. I was really just making recordings for posterity for my children because they were small at the time. And then it wasn't until around 2018 that I actually started getting more serious about it. And that made me decide, okay, let me put some energy and effort into it. Let me see if I can grow this thing.
Well, you're doing an incredible job. And I watch a lot of your videos going back a couple years. Couple things I don't know is your background when you were younger, how you grew up. Were you a religious person? Was your family religious in any way?
Oh, yes, indeed. So I was born in Marietta, Georgia, born into which is a suburb of Atlanta. And I was born into a Baptist family, a Baptist church family. And it was one of those where every Sunday we all went to church with my grandmother and just like all the aunties and the cousins and uncles and all those. We stayed in church pretty much all day. You're back on Wednesday for Bible study. And if you was part of anything in the church, you was there pretty much most of Saturday as well. So very much born into a church-going family. And I'll give you a brief rundown of my story. And then basically when I was about 9 years old was when I first started asking questions about the Bible. My grandmother had made me funny thing. I used to fall asleep under the pews when the preacher would start preaching. And then when I was about 9, my grandmother made me start paying attention. So now I'm paying attention. But as I'm paying attention, I'm noticing some things at 9 years old that just doesn't sound right. And the first thing was that he taught that all rich people go to hell because a camel can't go through the eye of a sewing needle, according to him, which I realized was, later on I realized how wrong that was. But that bothered me because I grew up poor and I didn't want to be poor. So I had to figure out a way for this camel to go through the eye of a sewing needle. So I started spending time reading the Bible, reading it, studying it, going to the library. Back then, we could go at 9 years old, you can walk up to the library by yourself. We were latchkey kids. And, I started reading reference books, and some of the homeless guys who was in the library would give me reference books to look at, historical books to look at. The librarian started helping me. And I started questioning the pastors. And, by the time I was 12, the church got tired of me asking questions. And I got kicked out of a few churches. I had come to find out that many of the pastors that were in my community couldn't read. So that bothered me. How can you study to show yourself approved if you can't read the book to study? And so, right around 12, 13, my grandmother, she was like, okay, you don't have to go to church anymore. As long as you keep studying, you don't have to go to church. And I was like, cool. But I continued to study the Bible because I wanted the Bible to be correct. I wanted to believe in it because, my family believed in it. My mother, my grandparents, my dad, everybody believed in this book. So I wanted to believe it. But the more and more I studied it, the more difficult it became. And then when I went to the Marine Corps and was able to go to Israel and go to many of these so-called other sites where biblical things happened or Christian things happened, like going to the Vatican and going to Turin and all these other places and going to the Greek islands, it's like, okay, this is a bunch of mess. There's no way Helena came into this. Helena is Constantine's mother, came into Israel in the 300s, and she was just like, oh yeah, this is where the cross was, and oh, I found pieces of the cross, and everybody and their mother has a piece of the cross, and she, found this and found that. I was like, okay, there's zero true archaeology involved in this. So, the more I discovered that, and then I realized that Constantine's entire story was a lie as far as his seeing Jesus and the cross in the sky and all that sort of thing. And I just dug deeper and deeper. And the deeper I dug, I found out how inaccurate the Bible is, how many contradictions it has. It's non-historical, how much it doesn't have any historical data, how the science of the Bible doesn't actually work. And by the time I was about 27 is when I really started walking away from it. And only because of family ties, it took me another good about 5 years to truly just walk away from Christianity. But it all started at 9 when asking questions, when I was told to study it.
So you have a very inquisitive mind.
Oh, yes. I
mean, questions are the enemy of religion, right?
Yes, they are. And I grew up in a family where as long as you were respectful, you can ask questions. It wasn't one of those children are seen, not heard. But as long as you stayed respectful and knew when to stop, then my grandparents, my parents, they didn't mind you asking questions. My aunts and everybody didn't mind you asking questions. So you were afforded that liberty when a lot of us Gen Xers were not afforded that liberty.
May I ask, after, let's say, leaving the faith, when you were maybe 27, like you were speaking about, when that happened, did you come and tell your family, or did you just kind of keep it quiet? What did you do with that?
I actually never had a conversation of just a flat out telling until probably about 15 years ago, 10, 15, I'm 53 now. So about 15 years ago, when there was a flat out telling, because everybody just knew, they heard me talk, heard me speak. They recognized when, they would hear me ask all the questions. And when I left the church and I gave up being a deacon and gave up being the chairman of the deacon board and wasn't teaching the, children's, teen church anymore. And when I told the family that I'm not praying, I'm not doing the family prayers anymore, they knew why. And it wasn't until we had like a little confrontation in the family that I actually was more specific that, look, I don't believe in this, and many other people in the family doesn't believe in this. And it was one of those situations where one family member was pressing the religion on some of the younger people in the family at one of our family vacations. So we do this big family vacation every Labor Day weekend. And so I had to bring it to bear to the elders of the family, like, we're not doing this. If this whole thing we're doing, if it's about religion and not about family, then you're about to cut the legs off of a lot of people in this family. We're not going to, and you're not going to force this on us. So that was the only time I had to really bring it out towards my family. But they've known for an incredibly long time. I'm lucky in that case. Most people, their family members start to cut them off. Their friends cut them off. And I did have some friends who cut me off, or people who I thought were my friends. I had some extended family members who were like by law married, by law family members who cut me off. And those, they hurt, but they would never have hurt as much as if it was my own family I grew up with. So some people go through that, and I think for me, they saw the whole process. They saw the studying. They saw the going, like everybody else goes on a vacation to the Caribbean or something like that, but I'm trying to go to Egypt. I want to go to Lebanon and Syria. You know?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a special pass so I can go to Iraq, because that's where the Euphrates River is. So for me, they were like, okay, he does different stuff because he's different.
Well, it certainly seems like you went deep. You did a deep dive over many years, and that's impressive. I mean, starting out questioning when you're 9, and then finally kind of leaving when you're 27. That's a lot of years when you were thinking about these things.
Yeah, and I really wanted Christianity to be true. All my studying back then was it wasn't a studying to debunk the Bible. I was studying to validate the Bible.
Yeah.
I had my questions and I had my doubts, and I was trying to overcome my own questions and doubts and make it right, make it work.
I think that's very interesting. I did the same thing. I was a Christian for many years, and I wanted it to be true, because when you question these types of things, when you're conditioned to believe in it, it becomes part of who you are. So it's difficult to ask these questions even of yourself. And it's a wonderful thing that you went that deep into it to try to figure out what is true, and I commend you for that. I think that's a very brave thing to do, even psychologically, because a lot of people will just let it sit, and they don't keep going with trying to get answers to the questions they have,
Yeah, and see, I had to get answers for it, because the more and more I started realizing the contradictions and the inaccuracies, you have a different range of emotions that begin to come up. So it's like at one point I became very angry, because how could my family have allowed for me to believe this? Other times it's a depression that you're going through. You have depression thoughts, and it's like, where do I go now, and what is my purpose in life, and what is the purpose of life, and why should I obey any laws or have any morality? So it's these different changes that you go through. So for me, it is not to fall back, but to push through those things. If I want to get to the other side, I got to get through the muck and the mire, and I got to make it there.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to press forward and not go backwards, and to keep asking these questions.
Exactly.
I look at my own life and don't think I'm ever going to stop asking questions, because, I want to know as much truth as I can, in the little bit I have here on earth.
Right.
And I'm wondering, your life since then, since like age 27 and moving forward, what it's been like after leaving like organized religion and going your own way,
I'm going to say that most of the time it's been a relief. It's been a relief most of the time, like to unburden yourself with that fear of hell and some God that shows that he's narcissistic, genocidal, full of emotions, and responds with a lot of insecurities. To be able to relieve yourself of having to bow down to such an idea, and that the concept of hell, this lake of fire and being tormented for all eternity, to get that out of your system is actually very freeing, incredibly freeing. So there's been less stress in my life. The openness to be able to understand other philosophies and to think critically, it has helped me to evaluate different decisions that I've made in my life, and then just to know that every situation in my life, whether a high situation or a low situation, because you still have highs and lows, they didn't come about because of some God, but they came about because either I made a decision and these are the effects, or somebody else made a decision and I am receiving the effects of their decision. But it's not a God Or it's not a punishment. It's not like I did something wrong and now I deserve this. Because I did foray into Buddhism for a little bit to study that, just to study it, and the ideas of karma. I was like, no, there's no karma. There's just, you do something, there's a result. Somebody else does something, there's a result. Oftentimes, there are intertwining causalities and results, and you are affected one way or another. So there is no karma or dharma to satisfy. There's no God that's watching over me, like, you didn't slay the lamb and cook it the right way. None of these things are happening. So I was like, it's a relief. And then it's also a power to know that your existence is in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
How your universe functions is in your hands. So if you want to have a greater life, a better life, then all you have to do is do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And not pray, oh, please let the light bill get paid. No, get some money and pay the damn bill. If you don't have enough money, go figure out a way to get some more money and pay the damn bill.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal empowerment there.
Yes.
And also responsibility.
Yes.
I found when I was a Christian, it was kind of, some of the personal responsibility wasn't there, because I could always say, well, it's in God's hands, right? So I, take myself out of the picture.
Yeah. Or the devil did
just
it.
Kind of making an excuse for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other side of it too, where you feel that outside forces are attacking you,
Yeah.
and that's, weak, right?
Yeah, just like I did a video yesterday. Yesterday, as far as when we're recording this, not yesterday when this is released, but I did a video on, what's today? On Sunday. So we put it that way. On Sunday, the 18th of May, I did a video where a gentleman had asked me about Solomon's keys.
I watched it.
Okay, so but for your audience sake, you have the Testament of Solomon, which is Solomon saying why he's writing this book of demonology. You have the higher keys, which is all the spells that Solomon puts out, and the lesser keys are all the names of the demons and what angelic name opposes that demon, so on and so forth. When people like stuff like that, because it gives some other reason why their life is not going well. It tells them that, oh, there's this demon, Samael, is trying to destroy me because I'm trying to be more God-centered. But it's not Samael, it's you. It's the fact that you like certain things, you want to do certain things, you have urges for certain things. And the greater society may say that that's a negative, but depending upon what the involvement is, it's not negative. If you're not hurting anyone else, then you go do what you want to do. If you're doing things with other people and there's consent, do what you want to do. There's no Samaels or these other Azazels who are trying to harm you. This is all just you. This is all the negative portion of you, what your thoughts are, and nothing else. And it's whether or not you act on it.
You become an autonomous person.
Yeah.
A person who has agency, and you truly recognize that you are important in your life. You are creating the things that happen in your life, right?
Exactly.
You can't blame a God or spiritual forces. And I think it makes you a much stronger person. But, of course, I'm a hardcore atheist, so I guess I would think that, right?
But it does. It does make you a stronger person. And here's the thing: no matter what religion a person believes in or doesn't believe in, when a person takes personal responsibility, even when you see Christians who are doing well, Buddhists who are doing well, Indus people who are doing well, you can see all these kind of people who have great lives doing well to the level that they desire. All of them are strong people, and all of them have these beliefs. But one thing they do share in common is that all of them takes responsibilities for a lot of their own actions. They may give credit to some God, or they may say, okay, this devil is trying to harm me. I believe God is going to help me to overcome this devil. And those kinds of people still can be strong and demonstrate strength. And Christians will point to that, right? Oh, you know what, this person, they just as strong as you are, but they're not atheists. They believe in God. But their belief in God is different from the average person's belief in God. They have a level that they do hit where they take personal responsibility and they take actions on their lives, whereas everybody else sits there and they just pray and hope that manna falls from heaven.
Yeah.
But the atheist, now in general, though, in a general view, I will say that the atheist is stronger than the Christian in a general viewpoint. So if you had 100 atheists and 100 Christians, you will have 100 atheists who are living a happier life than the 100 Christians, right?
Yeah, I think some studies show that when it goes into the countries that are the least religious, they say that they have very happy people.
Yes, when you look at countries like Denmark and Norway, Sweden,
Finland, those Scandinavian countries,
right?
They're very, very non-religious nations.
Yeah, they are incredibly secular, and they have a better quality of life. They have higher achievements. The people are happier because they don't deal with this religious convictions, and this religious conviction forces a person to think that they are better than someone else and gives a religious superiority, and that causes and that causes them to think that they should dominate somebody else.
Yeah,
and
that's the very negative part of religion, I think.
Incredible.
When it gets to be us versus them,
and that's what these religions are, though. They are all based on the us versus them model, and each group believes that they are the chosen group of their particular God, and their God is the God.
And it's amazing because they would never think of it that way. But ultimately, it's difficult when you do believe that you were chosen by God. It's kind of hard to maintain a humility. It becomes arrogant at some point in time. It's like, I know more than you know because, I'm a certain religion, and it divides people. That's one of the negative things that I don't like about religion just generally.
Yeah, and the most dangerous part about it is, there are countries that go to war with other countries, or there were in history tribes that went to war with other tribes, nations that went to war with other nations, and it was basically on resources. Resources, I need resources, I'm going to get these resources, or there was some incident that happened. But then when religion gets mixed in with that, now that is what gives them that thought process of superiority and genocide. It makes genocide okay. It makes this because they believe their God is the one that's supporting them, and it's okay for them to kill everybody else. And that's one of the recurring themes you see in the Bible itself. When Joshua supposedly going to Jericho, and it wasn't, defeat the enemy, and then after you defeat the enemy, teach them about Yahweh and let them convert to Yahweh. No, it was kill the fighting men, kill the old people, kill all the women, and kill all the babies, kill all the animals, burn the city down. This is the entire genocide because this God was so afraid of what happened at Mount Horeb when the Israelite men started getting some of that Moabite punani. They got that poom poom from them, and they started converting over. So this God is like, we can't have that anymore. So instead, we're just going to kill everybody. And everybody else had to be decimated, whether it was the city of Ai or when Joshua gave out the inheritances, they kill everybody, and if you can't kill them, enslave them. And that's what the Danites supposedly did. They couldn't kill all the Canaanites, so what the remaining ones they couldn't kill, they said, well, we'll just enslave them. right? And
Yeah.
people, and that's the thing about it. When you recognize that that's the mentality of this God, look at how that has played out as Christianity became a more dominant religion. You already had countries and people who were fighting wars against other people. But once that religion becomes a part of it, even more destruction happens throughout the world. You know? And it's not just, a lot of people may be thinking right now that I'm only speaking of like what happened in the Americas, what happened in Africa, and what happened in India. No. Look at the way the Irish were treated by the British, or even how the Scottish were treated by them. Look at how the Romans treated the Germanians, which are your people in your modern day French and Germans. You know, they treated them as substandard because they believed in their other gods, especially after Theodosius in 382 converted the entire Roman Empire over to Christianity. Now, when they went into these other lands of Europe, they decimated people more so than the Romans did beforehand. Beforehand, the Romans was, for the most part, would say, you come up under us, we will make you Roman citizens. Now it's, nope, we're just going to murder and kill you. And if you go against our religion, we have the right to genocide you.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there were groups that prior to Christianity, Romans did genocide or think that they were only good for slavery. Like, it's funny, the Britons hated the Irish and the Scottish. But when the Romans, when Julius Caesar went to Britain, he came back and said that the Britons were only good for slaves and feeding to the lions. So then the Britons get some Christianity in them, and now they want to treat the Irish and the Scottish like trash. Right? So everywhere this religion has gone, it has wrought nothing but destruction of a people. Whatever people it touches, it destroys those people. And then once those people become brainwashed into it, all they do now is destroy themselves and anybody else around them. And that's it.
I'm glad that you're speaking out about these things, because it's true, and it's a hard pill to swallow, you know, when you're involved and indoctrinated into these religions. You know, it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow, but we need voices like yours out there. And I'm just amazed that you've stuck with it for so long. I know that you've made like prolific content, you know, like a whole lot of content.
Yeah.
It seems like you make video every day, I think.
Yeah, I generally I make about 3 or 4 videos every day.
3 or 4. Wow.
Yeah. Most of them are short, you know, 10-minute, you know, anywhere from 10 minutes to 5-minute videos. You know, people ask me questions, or I see things that I really think the audience would be interested in debunking. Plus, also, you know, it's still continuing to. Sorry about that. I'm still continuing to log this information for my children, even though they're adults now. They're still young adults, so I'm still logging this information for my children's sake. If something ever happens to me, they will always have access to this information. Mm-hmm. That was the original reason of me creating the channel itself. But I found, I'll tell you what happened. Back in 2000, it's like somewhere around 2017, 2018, I saw this video where this man had decided that he wasn't going to be a pastor anymore. He was a youth pastor at a church, and he got fired from his job as a pastor. I understood that. That makes sense, right? Since he said he could no longer believe in this. But then he got fired from his civilian job because he decided he didn't want to be a pastor anymore. And then he started receiving death threats. And then he started getting all these, because the video went viral, he started getting all this hate from all these people. I did a couple of videos defending him. And when I did, he saw the video. He called me up. I started doing live videos on his channel to help him build his audience, you know, so that YouTube became the only way he was getting paid, that he could feed. And this man has a wife and he has 3 children. That was the only way he can get paid. So I didn't mind doing lives with him shit, every day we did a live, to help him build his audience. And from that, of course, my page started growing as well. Nowhere near to his level, but started growing as well. And, after that point, I felt like, now that, because I remember when, after a year of that, I had 3,000 subscribers, and I was like, well, I guess I have a responsibility now to 3,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to keep making content.
Yeah.
And I was off and on, sometimes I could go a year and only make about 20 videos in a year. Other times it was like I am today, where I made 3 videos before you and I got started on this interview. I'm still I got 1 more to make afterwards. And then I go live. Actually, I go live tonight with that gentleman, the guy that I did the video with, that I helped out back in the day. He's coming on to the show tonight.
Does he have a channel you want to plug?
His channel is Kevin Wesley, Be the Evolution. Yeah,
okay.
So he's getting ready to move to Colombia, and he want to establish like a community down there. So I'm bringing him on to talk about that tonight.
Oh.
Me and him became friends. I'm the godfather of his newest child, and so
is he Colombian?
No.
Okay, just he said he's going to Colombia. my girlfriend's Colombian. That's what I was wondering.
No. There's a lot of Americans have previously been exiting the country, and more recently are definitely exiting the country. And so he's looking to leave the country. So I mean, he also had, he's controversial in certain areas of his life. He has 2 wives, so. Those things bring up controversy, but so, and it's kind of like he's also doing me the favor of coming back onto my show now instead of me going on his show. For the years, because I was on his show for years, so for the years of dedication to him, if I ask him to come onto the show, he'll come onto the show, and that brings a following as well. So it's gonna be a good conversation, definitely. And for your audience, I go live every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
How did you get the name Coach Renz? Are you a coach?
So back in 2003, 2003, I started a personal training company.
Okay.
And one of the things that I realized very quickly is, so coming from a Marine background and then getting into personal training, what I realized is that I can't change these people just by simply telling them what to eat and telling them how to exercise. I actually have to get into their mind, and getting into their mind, I have to get into their past. So I turned my fitness company into a life coaching company. And so that's how the Coach Renz started. And then I was consulting with another company that was a knowledge management company. And I was consulting with them as well, doing government contracts and things of that nature. But I was also doing executive coaching with the owner of that company. And then a lot of my clients on the fitness side were executives. And so I started coaching them through leadership as well. And it just kind of, the name kind of, a couple of my clients started calling me that. And from there, because back in 2003, all these coaching certifications were relatively new, and these certifications, there's still no governing board, like there's no government oversight over it. Like you could start a coaching a coaching certification program today.
Yeah.
But, and then I spent years, like probably from 1990, all the way up till about 2008, there wasn't a Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Les Brown, Anthony Robbins.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah, there wasn't a motivational or coaching person out there that I wasn't listening to, going to their seminars. And as new people came up, I was going to their seminars and learning as much as I possibly could. Male, female, didn't matter. I was going.
Well, you are definitely someone who is taking in a lot of information,
Yeah.
And I got to ask you, after the years of leaving, organized religion, did you go through different phases where maybe you had a different view on spirituality? And where are you today, like on spirituality?
Yeah, so I did go through some different phases. I think that's a natural thing for some people, is that you go through a point where you still think of, where does my spirit go? Where does my soul go after, what's the afterlife? You start leaning into other philosophies that seem better. Like I started leaning into Buddhism, and then from Buddhism, I leaned into Taoism, which I do like Taoism. The Tao is devoid of a lot of the human bullshit that every other religion has. And then, I started looking at the roots of things. And one of the oldest forms of consciousness, that conscious thought that we have, comes from the Hermetics. Now, even though the oldest writings are more in the oldest writings that we have are more in the Renaissance area or pre-Renaissance area, like the 1200s CE time frame, but where that information comes from is further back. And when you look at every other religion, you can see elements of Hermetic within it. And so where I am now is, I don't believe in a soul in the sense that religion claims a soul or spirit. That is all just energy. And our consciousness, as yet still vastly undiscovered, but our consciousness, which we derive from our parents. See, the Buddhists say that you had your consciousness and it comes through samsara and reincarnates if you don't choose or raise your consciousness to reach nirvana. But this energy, everything about you comes from your parents, and that comes from their parents, and so far back in generations of your pieces of all of that. Well, we know the energy doesn't die, it just transmutes to something else. So when I do leave this existence, my consciousness doesn't die, it just transmutes to something else. Now, does it maintain a level of consciousness? I don't know. Does it do like every other energy in the universe, which transmutes to something totally different than what it was before? Because my body, your body, will be placed in the ground or burned, and mine will be burned, but it's cheaper.
Yeah, me too. I'm doing the same thing.
Yes. So it will vibrate at such a level that it will become ash and gas and just go off into the earth atmosphere. And this part becomes part of the water, that becomes part of a tree, this one becomes part of grass or whatever, But your consciousness is not something that's tangible to be burned, but yet it is energy. It is a complex energy. And the question is, what happens to that? Does it just disperse and just become part of the ether? Or if you raise and this is my thought, no proof, but thought. If you elevate your consciousness high enough to have a higher degree of understanding of how the universe functions, can your consciousness be so strong in its knowledge of that it forces the energy to stay together and then determine its own existence thereafter? Right? Now you can see some of that in the Buddhist tradition, the Taoist tradition, the Hermetic tradition, and there's a few other traditions that teach something similar to that.
Doesn't Hinduism kind of go into that too?
Yes.
Like the types of meditation and stuff.
That is the idea of satisfying your dharma. Like, so if you satisfy your dharma and you go through all the different caste systems and you become a Brahmin, once you become a Brahmin, you're supposed to be of this higher consciousness where you should reach a level where after that existence, you go on to be with Brahma. You know, Brahma and I forgot and Brahma's wife name, but you go on to that, to the beginning.
Is it Shiva?
It's not Shiva, but it's like, you know what? In some sects, it is Shiva. See, Hinduism is just as bad as Christianity. You got like 11 different variations. But no, it starts with an A. It's kind of like the mother energy or the primordial energy of the universe, in the same way that the Sumerians had the Namu, was the primordial waters that everything came into existence from, or in the Gnostic is the Plamora, right? So it's kind of like she's the primordial energy, and you go back to that, which Hermeticism does teach that the all is just mind, universal mind, and that when you reach the level of consciousness, you just join with the universal mind. But I don't want to join with a universal mind.
You want to be an individual.
I want to be an individual that creates my own existence. Like this universe, if we look at, because when we look at science, the science of it all, this universe is filled with different levels of existence that we have yet to discover. We have singularities that happen within known universes, right? So if our universe came from a singularity, and there are singularities happening within our galaxy or within our universe, then if I flip that to a more spiritual mind thought, why can't my mind exist in its own pocket dimension, just in the same way that singularities exist within a singularity? So if there is this mind, this creator mind, that the whole universe is just existing in the mind of some being that we can never discover, then I can create within that universe my own universe as well. Because you do it every night. When you dream, I dream every night. I don't know about you, but I dream every night. But every night that I dream, that is an entire universe that exists for that fleeting amount of time in my mind, right? And everything in there is real as far as it's concerned. Like last night, the car I was driving in my dream, it was real for the moment that it was in my mind. And if we are existing in the mind of some being, and this desk is just as real inside of his mind, its mind. So why can't I do the same thing? Why can't my mind be so great that I create a whole nother existence that I control? I do it. You can do it when you daydream. If you can lean back now, close your eyes, you can daydream and create a whole universe, right? So yeah. If you can do that now, if you are elevated and you are released from the shackles of this matter, this level of matter that we understand now, and you're released from the burdens of the laws of physics that we have to deal with, then why can't you manifest and create your own universe? Now, some people have touched on that. You know, John Smith, the Mormons, they touch on that in a very racist and male-dominated way, but they still touch on it. And that's what I see with a lot of these religions. They all kind of touch on these things. So my spirituality is more universal, but it's like I threw away all the crap that all these religions created, all the humanistic, man-made things that are based on a culture, things that are based on a race or a gender. It's like all of that means nothing, because in reality, none of those things exist. And that's how I've been able to strip away those things. Like, race don't exist. We make that shit up. Humans make that up. Sex exists as far as male and female, but it only exists as long as we're in this body. The moment your consciousness leaves this body, there is no such thing as sex anymore, right? And nations, nationalities, man-made, all this stuff, man-made.
Yeah.
So why should I allow my brain to think that way now? Only when I have to deal with it is when I allow myself to think about it. You know, I get pulled over by a cop, I'm gonna think about it. I see a big grown-ass man attacking a woman, I'm gonna think about it. But any other time, I don't have to think about that. Those things don't exist for me. Right?
You know, it brings to mind the biblical story about the sons of God, is it, or the angels that came down and supposedly had sex with human women.
Right.
And that story for me always was like, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, if they're angelic, they're spirit beings, right?
Yeah. Right.
So how in the world would it make sense that they had some sort of sexual relationships with a woman?
Because see, according to the story, according to the Bible, if you think about it, the Bible has it where these B'nai Elohim, sons of God, they materialize. When they come to earth, they materialize as human-like characters. So since they are human-like characters, they have to deal with human-like things. This is the poverty of the body that the Gnostics talk about. But remember, Abraham has to wash their feet, offers them food, you know, and many other times when they show up, they wrestle with Jacob, you know, they present them, they materialize, and Balaam also, all of a sudden Balaam can see them. So it's like when they come to earth, they have to change from their spiritual to their physical, to a physical body. And so that's the justification that they give as to why they were able to have sex with these women. But then they have these giant babies. Now I know a woman can push out a big baby out her boom boom, but there ain't nowhere in hell. And then the 3 cube law doesn't work with angels and humans. The human body can never be more than 8 feet tall without suffering all types of disabilities, right? So once you look at if you go and look up the tallest people ever to live, once you get up around 8 feet, you'll notice that they all are young and die young, or that they need crutches to walk or a cane to walk. The human body, any aspect, and I know these supposed to be mixed with angels, and so they're supposed to have something extra, but these angels have to convert to human in order to have sex with these women. But the human body doesn't work. It doesn't work. The human body will falter under that type of weight. And then the other part that throws a monkey wrench into the whole idea of them doing that is the fact that the Jesus character says that the angels in heaven are not given unto marriage, meaning that they don't have sex, they don't have marriage, and marriage is sex. Marriage is not the piece of paper that you get from the courthouse. It's having sex with someone, that's marriage. So it doesn't work. But then when you study and you go back and you start to read the other stories, you realize that the Akkadians and the Sumerians had previously written a story thousands of years prior to the Hebrew story about the Igigi coming down, this Igigi first the Igigi coming down and having sex with women that they captured at Marduk's wedding, that Marduk was getting married to a human, and Marduk's an Anunnaki. The Igigi come down and they snatch up about 200 women, and they start having sex with them and creating, you know, their own families and whatnot. But even before that, you had the Enochian story of Noah and the story of Zoroastrian and Atheism. You have the god Enki, the Anunnaki Enki, having sex with a mortal woman, and she produces this baby who turns out to be Noah in the Enochian story, Zoroastrian in the Sumerian, Utnapishtim in the Akkadian, and Atrahasis in the Babylonian story. So these are demigods. And we know this demigod idea is common. Zeus comes down, have sex with, what's her name? Have sex with a woman and produce Hercules. Have sex with another woman and produces Dionysus with Shmele, and produces Dionysus. So Zeus is known to come down and have sex with a bunch of women. And we know the Greeks have been around since at least 5000 BCE. So their stories have been around for a long time. And so they've always been, this idea of gods having sex with women or angels having sex with women has been a common story. So once I start to understand that, then it's like, okay, you know what? They just picked this story up just like every other Mediterranean people group and added it to their own story because it was, and that's how you spread a religion or create a new religion. You don't give them something totally brand new.
Yeah.
You give them something that's familiar and you switch it up a little bit, and now you've made it your own. It's kind of like, what's your heritage?
Meaning ethnicity or
ethnicity, like beyond American.
Oh yeah, I'm Italian and German.
All right, bet. So you ever been to Italy?
I've never been there. No.
Let me tell you something. You go to Italy. Did you grow up eating Italian food?
Of course.
Right.
Brooklyn, New York, Italian.
Even better, which makes it even worse, actually. Brooklyn Italian food. Although it's closer to the original than I grew up in Atlanta, than Atlanta Italian food. When you go to Italy, it won't be the same. It's totally different. But it's still spaghetti, right? It's going to look the same. It's going to have the same colors. It's going to be, a lot of it's going to be the same. But when you start eating it, because you're thinking like, oh, this is just like home. No, it's not like home. It's your real home. And it's going to taste different because
I've heard that from other people who went to Italy.
Yeah.
And I always think the best Italian food comes from New York. That's what I go with, No,
the best Italian food is in Napoli. That's where the best Italian food is. And
that's in Italy, yes.
Yeah. Yep. Napoli and Naples and Sicily. That was the best Italian food.
I have a Sicilian ethnicity.
Okay.
From Sicily. My Italian side came from Sicily.
Yeah. And so that's how religion is. Like the Canaanite religion Canaanite religion is your Brooklyn. It's your Brooklyn Italian food, right? But the Sumerian Anunnaki religion, that's the actual Italian food. Then the Hebrew religion, that's your Philadelphia Italian food. And then the Christianity, that's your Georgia Italian food.
Yeah.
It all claims to be Italian. It seems the same, but it ain't. It's different. As you keep going down and moving, the flavors change, the ingredients change, but it all still kind of looks the same. There's the similarities are still there,
Yeah.
You start to oh, this is different.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. And you've done a lot of studies on ancient civilizations. And I'm wondering, like, do you have a thought or take on where Yahweh actually came from? Like the beginning of Yahweh. Do you have a take on that?
I don't have a take. I have the reality.
Well, I have a take on it. I mean, I'm not like a real student of ancient civilizations.
Right. Okay.
I've thought that Yahweh came out of Canaanite religion, is what I thought.
You're absolutely right. Yahweh is a Canaanite religion. It came out of the Canaanite religion. So Yahweh is a Semitic religious God. In most cases, whether it's the Shashu people, the Moabite people, or the Canaanite, Canaanite can be a coverall as well as an individual group. But Yahweh has always been presented as the storm deity. This is because the Canaanites used to worship Enlil when they were under the rule of the Akkadians and the Sumerians. So Enlil was the storm deity. Well, once they start breaking free from these Akkadians after like 4 generations after Sargon, so this is in around the the second millennium, in the 2000s BCE, when the Canaanites start separating and all these different Canaanite groups. But Canaanite back then could be like American. We might say American. We're all Americans, right? But you are New Yorker, right? I'm a ATLian, right? So we're still Americans, but we are different different statehoods. So a Canaanite covered all this land in the Levant and the northern parts of Arabia. So then you're going to have the Shashu people, the Moabite people, some people who are going to call themselves Canaanites, but the Pebusites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Ammonites, all these other ites. All those ites are like the Georgians, Mississippians, Texans, and so on and so forth. Well, Enlil was the storm deity. That name got converted to Yahweh. Yahweh becomes the storm deity in all those Canaanite people's religion, right? So that's where Yahweh starts to develop. But now Yahweh still had some differences with him, because in the Canaanite version of Yahweh, his daddy was El.
And that's what I thought.
Right. His dad was El, and that would be them taking the idea of Anu and making Anu into El. Right. Now, later on, they convert El. Well, I get to that part. They convert Enlil into El later on. But so Enlil becomes El. Enlil is first initially Yahweh, and he is the son of El and Asherah. Asherah was El's wife. They had two children. Well, they had multiple children, but their two main children was Baal and Yahweh. Well, as the Hebrew people starts taking on, well, before the Hebrew people are created, before they section themselves off and call themselves Hebrew, Enlil becomes El instead of Anu being El. But then when the Israelites separate themselves somewhere in around the 1300 BCE to 1400 BCE, they then separate themselves and they maintain Yahweh. And then as time goes on, they take Yahweh and they merge him with El. So now Yahweh becomes El and has Mot and Baal as children, Asherah as a wife. But then after the Babylonian captivity, they get rid of Yahweh. They get rid of Asherah, and they make Baal and Mot evil gods, because now El can't have any children, because now he's an eternal God. You see, the ancient Hebrews didn't believe in eternal gods in the same way that they do now. That didn't come up until around the 400s, 300s BCE. So Yahweh just started out as a Canaanite storm deity, and then because it was written into their older testaments, their older scrolls, as Yahweh, and now they was writing as El, and some of that was because you had the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. They just left it all in there and just kept smashing it all together and say, okay, this is all one God. We just call them different names over different times because they had different meanings. But
yeah, I got a similar take. That's what my research shown.
Yes.
Monotheism came into play in that region with the nation of Israel, right? In terms of there being one God, the Shema.
No.
How did Yahweh become the one God?
They were copying from so they would have forgot about Akhenaten back in 1450 BCE. They would have forgotten about him by the time the Babylonian captivity happened. They were polytheistic at this time, or at least henotheistic at the least. But once they came under the rule of the Persians practiced the religion of Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism already have monotheism. Ahura Mazda is the god, and Agramenia is the devil. So when Cyrus comes in and takes over the Babylonian empire and establishes the Persian Empire and releases the Israelites back into Jerusalem, well, some people in their mind, they think that, Israel was his own independent kingdom. No, they were a puppet kingdom, a vassal. The correct term is a vassal kingdom of the Persians. And the Persians were teaching monotheism. And that's when they started changing their religion to fit monotheism. what you can see with the Israelite people is that whomever was conquering them is who they adapted their religion towards. So when it was the Assyrians, it was adapted to the Assyrians. When the Babylonians came and conquered, it was adapted to the Babylonians. Now the Persians are here and they adapted it to the Persians. But now once they adapted it to the Persians, when the Greeks come in, they didn't adapt to the Greeks because the Greeks tried to introduce Serapis to them, but it didn't work out. And then they had the Maccabean, the Hasmonean dynasty that lasted for about 100 years where they were independent of Greece for a minute. And then of course the Romans come after that. And then you get to Christianity. But,
so who do you think were the first monotheistic group? Was it Zoroastrianism? Or
well, technically,
it was the first group that said there's one God.
Well, for 17 years, the Egyptians believed in one God. They had the one God. Before Zoroastrianism came about. Zoroastrianism, that's with the Persian Empire. So that's more around your 600 to 500 BCE area that started. Akhenaten established monotheism in Egypt during his 17-year reign in around 1450 BCE. So he would have established it then, it just didn't take. And because the kingdom was losing money over it. The priesthood didn't like it because, we can't make any money off all of our other gods if we only got one God. So the Egyptians were the first one in recorded history to do it, but like I said, for only 17 years though. Then a more established long-term would be the Zoroastrians.
Followed by Judaism.
Yeah, right? followed by Judaism and Christianity.
And then Christianity, Islam. Right.
Well, I gotta put somebody ahead of them. Taoism. Taoism establishes a one God in around the same time as the Persians. Yeah, around the same time as the Persians, Taoism establishes a one God. But that God is not worshipped in Taoism in the same way that every other religion worships a God.
I think when a person dives deep like that and goes beyond Judaism, like earlier religion, I think they're on their way out of Christianity. Because,
most assuredly.
Once you realize that there was a lot going on prior to these Old Testament books,
Yeah, and the beauty of it is once you step back and you start looking at ancient religions, even in that region, but when you take a 360 view of the world, then you really start to see how all of this is created based on people just observing nature and observing the sky. And then they created deities for all this stuff. And then those deities got mixed in with however their culture was. And so the more you realize how these things are just man making guesses.
Yeah.
And then just creating stories based on events that happen. You start to say, okay, you know what? All of this religion is bullshit.
Yeah.
So this fear that I've had, I can let that go. This worship, this routine, these rituals, I can let all these things go because I don't have to do them because it truly has no bearing on my life.
Yes. And that's where the true strength comes in, I think.
It does.
For a person, an individual.
Most certainly. Yeah, it does. That's your strength. You do become stronger because now you've taken, to use the word you used earlier, you've taken your own agency. And agency just means that you are the decider of your life.
Yeah.
You get to make the decision. You have now gained control of your life. Whereas everything outside of your life was controlling who you are. You were controlled by the preacher, the mothers, the deacons, you were controlled by your parents, you were controlled by this shared thought of Christianity and how you should be. But now you have control and you can decide how you actually want to be and live.
Yeah, you're the captain of your own ship.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly empowering. At least I find that in my life.
Yeah.
After leaving religion, I found much more peace and strength
Mm-hmm.
within myself than when I was a Christian, you know?
Oh yes.
I think that's the reason, because I took control of my own life, and I accepted myself for who I am. And that's very powerful, you know?
That is incredible, especially when you accept yourself for who you actually are. When you
Yeah.
accept yourself for who you actually are, it makes your life a hell of a lot easier, because now you do things, you make decisions based on what's going to be to your greatest benefit, or at least what you think is going to be to your greatest benefit.
Yeah.
Things don't always work out right for
Right.
you, but
And you're doing it responsibly,
mm-hmm.
and you're doing it in cooperation with other individuals in your life.
Exactly.
You know, I've talked to Christians, and they'll say, well, that's selfish and egotistical, but it's not. It's not, it's not selfish. It's taking control of your own life so that you can cooperate with other human beings.
Right. It's true self-love.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah. So let me ask you one last thing.
All right.
About your channel and where you'd like to go with it. I'm curious, like, do you have somewhere you would like to be as far as your channel, let's say in 5 years from now? You know, is there any type of impact you want to leave, that the wisdom that you've gained through all these years of study,
right,
and seeking knowledge, is there any goal to it, or is it just really just to leave a legacy for your children?
Well, that is a very good question, and it's something that's I've been actually coming to a more and more of a realization of in this last year. So, I used to own a gourmet popcorn shop and a cigar lounge, and so I was always working. Yeah. But now I've taken the last year and a half off, right? And in doing so, I see the financial opportunities of social media, and that's fine. I'm not really like hurting in that direction, hurting for that. So as I've been thinking about, catch me on the good one here, because it's something that, like, even over this weekend, me and my wife was discussing this. Like, what impact do I really want to have?
Yeah.
And even though I have the capacity to create a movement, do I want to give that much of myself to create something like that? Is the big question that I've been asking myself over these recent few months. I would like to see more people become free. I would love to help a lot more people become free. And then I would love to help those people build their life. I really want to help people build their lives. That's the main thing that I love doing, is helping people to build the life that they desire. I'll tell you what holds me back a little bit is notoriety. I've always said I never want the notoriety of fame, but I want the money of fame.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sometimes, like, me and my wife, we could be somewhere, and then I literally get embarrassed when people come up to me and they recognize me.
I'm
freaking embarrassed, and I'll take the picture with them. I'll talk to them if I can, but sometimes it's annoying. If me and my wife are trying to enjoy a dinner, that's not the time. We're in the movie theaters trying to get to the movie.
Yeah.
Stop trying to talk to me while I'm trying to go watch this movie. The recognition is something that I'm not a fan of. But sometimes you just got to give certain parts of yourself up, in order to do a greater thing. So where I see it in 5 years, I actually see both my Facebook and YouTube channel being at such a degree where it is legitimately making an impact on people who are able to walk away from this religion safely, and have a community around them, waiting for them, because when they lose their family members, when they lose their friends, and sometimes when they lose their wives and husbands and children, that they have a landing spot where they have a new family that's saying, hey, I'm here to get to know you, And I'm here to see if we can develop a bond, because we all have been through the same thing that you're going through. So that would be the biggest goal, to do that, but to do it without creating a religion, a new religion.
Right.
I cannot, because even though I'm not, I don't declare to be an atheist. I declare more to be agnostic, but I'm a hermetic Taoist, alchemical agnostic, because I do continuously study the Tao, hermeticism, and alchemy. So to do it without creating a following that follows, say, and all these people got to think the same way I think.
Yeah.
No, I just want you to be free to think however you think.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I relate so much to that, Coach Renz, because I don't want people to think like I do. I want them to think for themselves.
Yes.
You
Exactly.
know, and to figure things out for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and that's the goal.
And when we're on YouTube or anytime we're putting ourselves out there, we run the risk of trying to establish our way only, right?
Exactly.
And I don't want to do that, you know, but I'm totally with you. And we're on the same side when it comes to giving people a place where they can safely transition out of, you know, conventional organized religion and into a more free thinking community, you know.
Exactly.
And that's what my channel's ultimately about, you know. Same thing, really, deconstructing from Christianity. I mean, because I was in it so long, so that's a part of what I want to help people with, you know.
I'm with you. That's where I am. That's
But yeah, I'm totally with you too. I don't want my own religion.
Yeah, no.
So, if there's any social media that you want to mention, please do. I know that your YouTube channel is large. I mean, to me, you're like, you know, I don't know, way up there, right? But
Right.
but you probably have other social media I'm probably not even aware of. So if you want to tell people where they can reach you, and
so they can reach me on TikTok, even though I don't really care for TikTok. But I know that's just where some people like me, and it's just an easy way to make videos. But you can find me on TikTok under Deconstructing Christianity, Facebook, which is one of my favorites, Deconstructing Christianity, the same on there, and here on YouTube. The title of the channel is Deconstructing Christianity. If you're using the @ symbol, though, it's @CoachFriends33. But
yeah,
you can find me. That's YouTube and Facebook are my primary places that I like for people to go. If I don't answer any questions on TikTok at all.
yeah.
If I answer, and I get about 60 to 50 questions a day, so I don't answer everybody's questions anyway. But definitely Facebook and YouTube would be the place to find me.
Appreciate that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link for your YouTube channel.
Thank you.
In the description below when people watch it. All right. And anyone watching this, please subscribe to Lorenzo at Coach Renz 38, is it?
Coach Renz 33.
Coach Renz 33.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
This is my
Coach
pleasure.
Renz. I appreciate it immensely. And love people that are trying to make a difference in bringing people out of organized religion.
It's my pleasure to be here.
I truly believe that there's much more joy, peace, and strength without religion, you know.
Definitely agree with you on that one.
So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
All right.